Only later did I realize I was nothing but cannon fodder whose destiny had been snatched away by the heroine. The girl who, years ago, leapt into the river out of grief from a broken engagement and was saved by me by mere chance, she turned out to be the heroine of this tale. Step by step, she replaced me, becoming the cherished daughter of the Marquis of Nanyu. The love of my parents, the care of my elder brother, everything that once belonged to me, she claimed as her own. Only my childhood companion, Wenyu, had never wavered. He always stood by my side, until he died on the battlefield, his body never returned. In the end, I was disgraced to death by the very people the heroine had sent. A life ended in humiliation. But when I opened my eyes once more, I was back, on the very day she, in shame and despair, flung herself into the river. Miss, look. Someone jumped into the river. The urgent cry of Chun Lu rang in my ears like a sudden bell that struck deep into my heart. Amidst the surging waters, a woman drifted, half submerged. That tear-streaked pear-blossom face, I could never forget, even if it turned to ash. It was none other than the heroine of this story. Zhong Yuanni. Chun Lu looked at me, hesitantly asking, Miss, should I save her? I replied calmly, no need. The same play, I had already acted it once in my past life. Back then, just like today, when you and I were flying a kite by the riverbank. A strong gust snapped the string, and he went to retrieve it, while I rested with Chun Lu nearby. Soon after, amid the howling wind, there came a loud splash. A woman had jumped into the river, a stunningly beautiful one. In my past life, I had told Chun Lu to pull her out. She was dragged to shore, trembling and weeping like the heavens had opened. Her choked sobs lingered in my ears. Just let me die, the world is so cruel, there's no place for someone like me. I don't want to live anymore. It was the first time I'd seen someone cry like that. I didn't know what to do. I had always been stubborn and wild as a child, climbing walls and causing trouble, yet never once had I shed a tear, thanks to my doting parents and Wenyu's protection. But that day, faced with such sorrow, I finally understood why they say women are made of water. After crying, she told me her name, Zhong Yuanni. She was once the beloved daughter of a minor official. Though her father held only a 7th-rank post, she was his only child and greatly cherished. Yet fate was cruel. Her father was caught in the political struggle between imperial princes, dismissed from office, and died suddenly before leaving the capital. Her mother, stricken with grief, threw herself against his coffin and followed him in death. Alone, she managed their funerals, only to be abandoned by her fiancé and stripped of her family's assets by her uncles. With nowhere to go, homeless and hopeless, she wandered to the bridge and jumped into the river out of shame. Her tale filled me with sorrow and pity. Seeing her so forlorn, I decided to take her back to the Marquis of Nanyo's estate. Just then, Wenyu returned with the kite. Noticing a strange, fragile woman beside me, his face immediately darkened. Who is this? Zhong Yuanni paused, stunned at the sight of Wenyu. Her face, pale from the icy spring water, suddenly flushed with the faintest hue of red. Wenyu was strikingly handsome, black hair, bright eyes, snow-pale skin, and a noble air like polished jade. No one would guess he had joined the battlefield at 12 and earned a name feared by enemies. He hated being stared at, and Zhong Yuanni's gaze only made his brows furrow deeper. Growing up with him, I could tell at a glance, Wenyu disliked her. I smiled to soften him. Ah, you, this young lady has no one left in the world. I thought. He shot me a glance, displeased. Can you stop bringing home every pitiful creature you meet? How many have there been, from childhood till now? Lame dogs, injured cats, birds with broken wings, all dumped in my courtyard. It's turning into a zoo. And now. You've even picked up a person. If you really pity her, just give her some silver. Why bring her home? Hearing this, Zhong Yuanni's expression changed drastically. Tears welled up in her eyes. Does the young master think me so lowly? Must you humiliate me with silver? I hurried to apologize, tugging Wen Yu's sleeve playfully. We've already saved her, might as well see it through. Besides, Miss Zhang is beautiful. You know I adore pretty things. Wen Yu, unable to resist my antics, finally relented with a sigh. But back then, I didn't know. That very choice was the beginning of my downfall. I had invited the wolf into the house. Zhong Yuanni was delicate, graceful, and utterly unlike my own dazzling and spirited self. She carried a softness that stirred protective instincts in others. A mere furrow of her brows or a gentle smile could unsettle hearts. At first, we were close, or so I naively believed. I stopped spending time with Wen Yu and visited her courtyard daily, gifting her rare cosmetics, beautiful gowns, and bringing her to spring banquets and noble ladies' gatherings. Fearing she'd be looked down upon, I introduced her as a distant cousin. As the sole daughter of the Marquis household, I treated her as my own sister, with sincere affection. Until one day, after dropping off a gift, I suddenly remembered something I'd forgotten and turned back. Through the open lattice window, I saw a scene I would never forget. Zhong Yuanni, her face no longer gentle, wore a cold smirk as she shredded the silk Luoxian gown I had just given her. My heart instantly chilled. Chun Lu was so furious she wanted to rush in and confront her, but I stopped her. We left the courtyard in silence. Though saddened, I remained calm. Someone like Zhong Yuanni, ungrateful and treacherous, must never be kept around. I told Mother what had happened. She merely glanced at me and replied coolly. You must have mistaken it. Yuanni has such a kind temperament. She would never do something like that. I was stunned. I never expected such a response. No, Mother. I really... Ta Mingzhou. My brother suddenly roared, his face darker than the bottom of a pot. You've always been headstrong. The moment something goes against your wishes, you throw a tantrum. But this concerns a young lady's reputation. How can you speak so carelessly? I stared at them wide-eyed. The very people who had once loved and protected me now felt like strangers. And in that moment, I understood, though I had brought Zhong Yuanni into this household, I no longer had the right to send her away. From that day forward, I stopped visiting her. She didn't seem to care. She was far too busy. Busy copying Buddhist sutras with my mother. Busy embroidering scented sachets for my father. Busy serving sweet tea to my brother. Even Wen Yu once received a sword tassel handmade by her. Only I had never received a single thing. The day she gave the tassel to Wen Yu, I happened to be at the pavilion tower inside the general's estate. From above, I saw everything clearly. Zhong Yuanni, pale as snow, with pink flushed cheeks and a voice sweet as honey, said, Ah Yugij, I noticed your sword was missing a tassel. I made this myself, please don't find it lacking. Wen Yu looked at her with a half smile, but his eyes were ice cold. The longer you looked, the more they chilled you. Zhong Yuanni's expression stiffened slightly. She forced a laugh. Ah Yugij, why are you looking at me like that? Look how thick her skin is. Wen Yu retracted his smile. His gaze turned frigid, voice sharp with disdain. There's only one son in the general's estate, me. I'm not your Gij. Don't toss around fake kinship. You come from a lowly background. Your best talent is playing petty tricks. Let me give you a warning, don't try that nonsense with me. I'm not one of those clueless fools in the Marquis's household who can't tell right from wrong. And one more thing, I only accept gifts from Mingzhou. I don't want your tassel, Miss Zhang. Take it back. Zhong Yuanni's face went ghostly pale. Her eyes welled with tears, her fragile frame trembling like she might collapse at any moment, truly pitiable. Unfortunately, Wen Yu had a heart of iron. He was completely unmoved. He grabbed the bottle of plum wine I loved and turned away, walking into the pavilion. I rested my chin on my hands and watched everything from above. And laughed. Laughed freely. Finally, some sweet revenge. I drank plum wine and clung to Winyu's arm. Normally, I could hold my liquor, but that day I was hopelessly drunk. I sobbed into his arm. Hoo-hoo. Ah, you're the best in the whole world. From now on, I'll never tattle on you to uncle and auntie again. Winyu pinched my flushed cheek, lips twitching in amusement. Bullied by an orphan to this extent, why not use the same tricks you use on me? I looked at him blankly. A wave of bitterness rose in my chest. My voice trembled with frustration. She has her parents and brother behind her. I have no one. He gently patted my head, his tone serious. Don't say that. My Mingzhou has someone behind her too. You have me. Tears welled up again. I looked up at him, voice soft and full of emotion. Ah, you. Ah, you. If it weren't for you, how would I go on living? The tips of his ears flushed red. He muttered under his breath. She calls me Gidge sweet as honey, and you? You'd rather die than call me Gidge. I blinked through my drunken haze, then snorted. Not a chance. Calling you Gidge is just letting you boss me around. We bickered with words, but my heart was full of joy. Thank goodness, I still had Winyu. While everyone around me was gradually being taken by Zhong Yuanni, only he remained firmly on my side. Before long, the day came for Winyu to depart for war. The night before the army set out, he couldn't rest. He climbed over the estate wall at midnight to see me. He spoke with urgency. Zhong Yuanni's heart is not pure. Be on guard. If anything happens, go to the general's estate, my mother will help you. I didn't want him to worry. I smiled radiantly. Don't worry, Yu. I'll wait for your triumphant return to the capital. But not even half a year after when you left, my parents decided to adopt Zhong Yuanni as their foster daughter, officially recording her name in our family registry. She was a year older than me, so she was placed of me, rightfully becoming the eldest legitimate daughter of the Marquis household. Everything good in the estate was offered to her first. Whatever was left came to me. One day, when no one was around, she leaned close and whispered in my ear with a cold smile. Little sister, remember those shabby second-hand cosmetics you gave me before? Ever imagine this day would come? I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed off to demand an explanation from my parents. But Zhong Yuanni turned on the waterworks instantly, flipping her expression like a page. Mimi, why do you always target me? I'm just an orphan, lucky to be adopted as a foster daughter. You're the legitimate daughter of this household, don't worry. I'll never fight you for anything. She trembled as she cried, clutching her handkerchief, sobbing like a pear blossom in the rain, so weak, so helpless, so heart-wrenching. Tears had always been her deadliest weapon. My father, fuming, pointed at me and shouted. Ta Mingzhou. You've been spoiled rotten. Yuanni is now part of our genealogy, your elder sister. She is a proper lady of this house. Sisters fighting like this, what a disgrace. My mother looked at me with disappointment. Mingzhou, you'll come of age next month. How can you still behave like a child? My brother's voice turned severe. With behavior like this, how can you call yourself a noble daughter of a prestigious family? Everyone turned on me, not holding back in the slightest. Zhong Yuanni stood beside them, smiling gently. But behind that smile was pure mockery. She mouthed soundlessly at me. Ta Mingzhou. You want to fight me? Do you really think you and Appo's worthy? In that moment, I felt as if my entire world had crumbled. Before Zhong Yuanni appeared, father told me I was the rightful daughter of the Marquis household, free to shine and be bold. Mother praised my innocence and kindness, saying I was the model noble daughter. My brother, though always quiet, protected me in his own way. But now, what was once called innocence had become foolishness. What was once brilliance had become arrogance. I was not willing to accept this fate. I had tried to turn myself into a copy of Zhong Yuanni, mimicking her demeanor, all in hopes of regaining my parents' and brother's love. I carefully embroidered a sachet for my father, staying up all night until my eyes were bloodshot, my fingertips swollen from countless pricks of the needle. But all I received in return was his cold reply. I don't need the sachet you made. Your sister made hers out of filial piety. You only did it to win favor. How can the two be compared? My brother scolded me for being shameless and imitating others. It was then I truly understood, my father, mother, brother, even this entire Marquis household, no longer belonged to me. I locked myself in my room, writing letter after letter to win you, day and night. I wept as I wrote, tears soaking into the paper and blurring the ink. I wiped them away and wrote again. Every letter was full of lies. I told him the capital was fine, just dull and lifeless without him. When you replied. He told me the barbarian tribes were weak, nothing to fear. He spoke of warriors shedding blood on the battlefield to earn glory, of yellow sands and raging fires on the vast frontier, heroic scenes like those in painted scrolls. And he said, he missed me very much. The final straw that broke me was the news of Wen Yu's death at the border. The moment that news reached the capital, Aunt Wen fainted on the spot. She fell gravely ill and never woke again. I knelt by her bedside, sobbing until my heart tore apart. I refused to believe Wen Yu had died. I told myself he was only injured. I made up my mind, I would go to the frontier and bring him back myself. When my parents found out, they locked me in my room and posted guards to keep me inside. It was Zhong Yuanni who released me that night, even helping me escape in secret. She smiled sweetly and said, Mimi, go. Go bring back the body of the young General Wen. I took Chun Lu with me and ran headlong into the dark night. But before we even made it beyond the outskirts of the city, we were ambushed by a group of black-clad assassins with terrifying martial skill. They surrounded us and killed Chun Lu. Chun Lu had been personally trained by Wen Yu. Her skills were formidable, yet even she could not withstand such numbers. Covered in blood, she fought to her last breath, screaming with all her might. Miss. Run. Run now. I clenched my teeth, tears blurring my vision, and ran with every ounce of strength I had. But in the end, I couldn't escape. The assassins beat my body to death. That night, the cold moon hung low over the horizon, tinted with blood. My soul, torn from my mangled body, drifted unconsciously back to the Marquis estate, back to Zhong Yuanni. And then, I heard her speaking to the air. Her voice was filled with triumph. System, the original heroine is dead. I've taken all her fortune. A voice echoed from the void, neither male nor female. Congratulations, host. Next mission, capture the male lead. Wen Yu. He has fallen into a ravine and lost his memory. Proceed to the border immediately and bring him back. Zhong Yuanni gave a cold, mocking laugh. Speaking of Ta Mingzhou, what a fool. I stole her jade pendant, her fate, and she died without ever realizing. Even the river incident back then was a trap I spent days preparing just to lure her in. Upon hearing this, my very soul felt as if struck by lightning. So this world I lived in was just a story. And I was cannon fodder. A side character, doomed to be stripped of everything, even the dignity to die as a person. The past life had been one long, unending nightmare. Now, under the blue sky, with spring waters flowing gently before me, my heart was frozen solid, hard as steel. I will never again be cannon fodder. I clenched my jaw and suddenly looked up at Zhong Yuanni, who was still struggling in the river. I said coldly to Chun Lu. Kill her. Zhong Yuanni, seeing that I had finally looked her way, thought she had won my attention. She kicked and flailed harder, looking on the brink of drowning, her beauty twisted in panic. Even the coldest onlookers might have hesitated to harm her. But Chun Lu had always obeyed my every word. Even though her lady had once been soft-hearted, Now she had ordered death, and Chun-Lu didn't hesitate for a second. She gripped a throwing dagger between her fingers, channeled her inner energy, and hurled it with deadly precision. The blade tore through the air with a sharp whoosh, a strike to kill. Zhong Yuanni stared at me, disbelieving. Blood bloomed on her chest like a crimson flower, dyeing the river red. She writhed in agony for a few moments, and then floated lifelessly on the surface. Remembering the strange system she had mentioned in my past life, I wasn't reassured. What if she wasn't truly dead? I told Chun-Lu. Strike again. Without hesitation, Chun-Lu threw a second blade. This time, Zhong Yuanni's corpse sank to the bottom of the river. Only when she disappeared completely beneath the surface did my strength leave me. I leaned weakly against a tree, forehead drenched in cold sweat. Chun-Lu panicked and rushed to steady me. Miss. Are you all right? Just then, when you returned with the kite, saw my pale face, and immediately tapped the ground with his foot. His figure flashed forward, light as a feather, landing before me. What's wrong? What happened? I looked up at the young man before me, and all the scenes of my past life came rushing back in a torrent. Pain. Anger. Bitterness. Regret. Countless emotions overwhelmed me, and my eyes turned red. When you panicked, reached to wipe my tears, but couldn't find a handkerchief. So he grabbed his sleeve instead, gently coaxing me. Don't cry, don't cry. Who bullied you? I'll beat them for you. My throat tightened. I couldn't speak for a long moment. He turned urgently to Chun-Lu. I was only gone a moment, what happened? Chun-Lu looked down nervously, eyes shifty, clearly hiding something. Unable to withstand Wen-Yu's sharp gaze, she trembled and whispered in my ear. Miss, about what we just did, should I tell him? I let out a small laugh. Tears that hadn't even dried yet were swept away by that bright smile. All the pain and hatred of my past life seemed to vanish in that instant. I answered calmly. It's nothing. I only told Chun-Lu to kill someone. My tone was light, and Wen-Yu accepted it just as lightly. He only replied, oh, and said no more. That reaction, what was that? I stared at him in surprise. You're not going to ask who I killed? Or why? Wen-Yu reached out again and pinched my cheek lightly, speaking with natural confidence. Why bother asking? If you wanted to tell me, you would. And anyway, killing someone is killing someone. I know exactly what kind of person you are. You'd never harm an innocent. Those who love you. No matter how outrageous your actions may seem, they'll trust you unconditionally. Chun-Lu was like that. Wen-Yu was like that. With Wen-Yu, I had nothing to hide. I told him everything, about my past life. After hearing it, Wen-Yu's expression turned dark. He clenched his fist and punched the tree beside us with a loud thud. Your parents and brother, have they lost all sense of reason? All because of some ridiculous storyline, they truly treated a living, breathing daughter like that. What kind of parents, what kind of brother are they? A biological daughter, a blood sister, and yet they favored an outsider instead. Where the hell were their brains? Me, in my past life, I must have been useless. Letting them bully you like that. The more he cursed, the more I laughed, brightly, like a fool. But in my heart, waves of warmth surged. He blamed himself for not being strong enough in our past life, for not protecting me. But I knew, he had already done more than enough. Before he left for war, he told me to wait for him. That once he returned in victory, he would marry me. Neither of us knew that when he left, he would never return. That orphan girl, what was she really? Because of her. Wen-Yu's voice choked. His eyes turned red. Then suddenly, he wrapped his arms around me tightly and whispered, voice hoarse. It was me, I didn't protect you enough. I let you suffer. On our way back to the Marquis estate, I caught sight of Mo Bai, my brother Taiyan's servant boy. He was riding the same horse as an old man with silver hair. The stallion galloped past our carriage like the wind and turned sharply into an alley up ahead. I immediately ordered someone to follow them in secret and find out the truth. At the end of that alley stood a quiet residence with tightly shut gates. Wen Yu, with his unmatched lightness skill, leapt onto the wall to scout the inside. Before long, we had an answer. Ta Yen had rescued a woman. She now lay bloodied on a bed, barely breathing. The physician said 2 throwing knives had nearly pierced her heart sac. Her life hung by a thread. And those throwing knives were Chun Lu's weapons. Chun Lu turned pale. Miss, I struck both fatal points. Shi Shun and Oppos, T have survived. I gently patted her hand, soothing her. Don't worry. It's not your fault. Truthfully, I wasn't surprised. Those 2 strikes would have killed any ordinary person. But Zhong Yuanni was not ordinary. With that strange system in her body, it wasn't odd if she had access to some kind of sorcery or forbidden arts. The order I gave Chun Lu to kill her, it had always been a test. And the result was exactly as I feared. Killing her was not enough to break the chains of the past. Even without me saving her, she still managed to latch onto Ta Yen, slipping one foot into the Marquis of Nanyo's estate once again. Could it be, the events of the previous life were repeating? Would I once again lose everything to Zhong Yuanni, be trampled into the dirt, and die a tragic, futile death? Inside the carriage, silence hung heavy as silk. I turned my head toward Wen Yu and said slowly. Did you know? My grandfather was once a hunter, but born with rare talent, fierce and clever. He rose through the ranks by military merit. Later, he aided the founding empress and was granted a noble title and estate. That's how the Marquis of Nanyo's household began. My grandfather inherited the title. Skilled in both civil and martial arts, he wasn't just a brilliant warrior, he passed the imperial exam as top scholar and rose to become vice minister of war. In his time, our family stood at its peak, glorious and radiant as brocade under firelight. But my father, he had mediocre talent. He barely managed to maintain the household. After grandfather passed, our estate still shone on the surface, but inside, it had already begun to decay. Now, in the eyes of His Majesty, the Marquis household holds little influence. My brother, Ta Yen, shoulders the duty of reviving our family's name. He followed grandfather's path through the imperial exams, but with limited intellect, he only barely passed after 3 tries, ranking last. Compared to grandfather, he's worlds apart. When we were little, grandfather used to read and write with me and Ta Yen. I was mischievous, he was rigid. I'd always answer quicker, twisting lessons into odd arguments, making grandfather laugh and cry at the same time. Back then, the previous emperor lay ill. Due to a childhood poisoning during the palace chaos, his body was weak and left no heirs. Before passing, he named his younger brother as successor, the current emperor. After the new emperor took the throne, the female official system wasn't openly abolished, but it faded. Fewer and fewer women entered government. Ministers caught on, subtly excluding and suppressing women. Female success in the imperial exam became all but impossible. Grandfather could only sigh. A pity, born in the wrong era. After his death, my father stopped my studies. From then on, I no longer needed to attend lessons. I was to live quietly as a noble young lady. He said I was his precious jewel, meant only to enjoy peace and ease. Only after being reborn did I tear away the chains of family sentiment and finally see the truth. My father was strict with Ta Yen because he was the firstborn son, responsible for continuing the bloodline and legacy. But with me, he was indulgent not out of love, but because I was a daughter, useful for marriage alliances to strengthen the family. Since the quiet abolishment of the female official system, daughters couldn't earn military merit or become officials. My only value lay in one thing, my deep childhood bond with Wen Yu. My parents valued the general's household. They valued Wen Yu. That's why, in my past life, as long as when you remained, they never brought up the idea of adopting Zhong Yuanni. But once when you left, they didn't hesitate. They brought her in, entered her name into the family register, and made her the legitimate daughter of the Marquis estate. When you, hearing this, finally understood. He spoke slowly. So you're saying, your parents and brother only favored you not because they truly loved you, but because you had control over me. His face turned red, eyes shifting to the sky as he muttered, embarrassed. To be honest, they weren't wrong. I really was rapidowned your little finger. I burst into laughter. Can you be serious? That's not the point. When you pouted and gave me a resentful glare, as if I were the one being heartless. How is that not the point? Don't you think that's very important? He asked, eyes wide with sincerity. I rolled mine. The point is, my parents are the kind of people who prioritize benefit over blood. In my past life, their bias toward Zhong Yuanni wasn't just because of some preset plot, it must have been because. Before I could finish, I rushed back home. I opened my jewelry box and took out a single jade pendant. I turned it over and over in my hand. It looked like ordinary warm jade, nothing special. In my past life, Zhong Yuanni had once asked me for it. But since it had been a gift from someone else, I refused to give it. Later, the pendant mysteriously disappeared. I didn't realize until after my death, she had stolen it. My box was filled with valuables, yet she took nothing but this plain piece of jade. Then she told the system she had seized my fated opportunity. That jade had been gifted to me by a beggar. When I was 10, I saw him being beaten on the street, clothes tattered, blood on his lips. I couldn't bear it and stepped in to help. I even brought a physician and treated him to a hearty meal at an inn. Before parting, I secretly gave him 30 taels of silver and coaxed him gently. Just think of it as a loan. Winter's coming, rent a place to stay warm. When spring returns, pay me back if you can. He wept. If my daughter were still alive, she'd be your age by now. Miss, fate brought us together. Please accept this. He rummaged through his rags and finally produced that piece of warm jade and placed it in my hands. The last time I saw him was under a sky of falling snow, his body collapsed on the roadside, alone and frozen. He hadn't taken my advice. He hadn't rented a place. Perhaps he'd long given up on living. When you had said back then, he probably gave up on life a long time ago. My chest ached. I could barely breathe. That day, when you and I had just returned from a banquet at the Prime Minister's residence. The place was extravagant beyond measure, even a teacup was worth 1,000 gold. Noble daughters gambled with leaves, placing bets of hundreds of taels without even blinking. On one side, wine and meat in excess. On the other, frozen bones in the snow. For the first time, I truly understood the old saying. Within noble halls, wine and meat rot, outside, the bones of the frozen poor lie unburied. When you and I buried the beggar on a quiet green hill outside the city, we considered that moment the end of our brief connection. Snapping out of the memory, I immediately asked you to investigate the beggar's true identity. Thanks to the intelligence network of the general's estate, news arrived swiftly. The beggar was none other than divine Dr. Mu of the famed Valley of the Medicine King. His skills were said to bring the dead back to life. Countless nobles had once sought him for treatment, until one day he vanished, leaving only a single legend. He had hidden away a treasure trove, filled with rare medicines, gold, and miraculous pills. Currently, with the emperor's health failing and the princes secretly vying for power, everyone wanted that miracle cure to curry favor at court. At last, I understood why, in my past life, my parents suddenly adored Zhong Yuanni. She had stolen my jade pendant. She used it to open the treasure trove and offered a divine elixir to my father. He then presented it to the emperor, restoring his health. The Marquis household regained favor, and my father was promoted. I burst into laughter. Zhong Yuanni had gone through all that, stealing my fortune, snatching away my fate, unlocking that vault, just to win my parents' affection, wear the title of legitimate daughter, and claim the shallow love of a man. In my past life, I cared. But this life, I couldn't care less. I didn't need my parents' love. I didn't need my brother's protection. What I wanted was power. I wanted influence. I wanted to rise high, so that all beneath the heavens had to look up to me. When you personally took on the search for the treasure trove, he didn't delegate a single step. A few days later, my mother mentioned she had been plagued by nightmares for several nights. My brother, Tai Yan, invited the imperial seer. The seer declared, "There is a vengeful spirit haunting the residence. To subdue it, one must adopt a girl born in the most inauspicious hour, on a day, in a month, and year." After the seer left, Tai Yan told mother, "Don't worry, I'll find this girl." I heard that, and laughed coldly to myself. Zhong Yuanni's tactics were truly impressive. She'd even come up with this method to enter the Marquis' estate openly, become a foster daughter, and send my brother running all over the capital for her. But if she thought her plan would succeed so easily, she was sorely mistaken. The next day, when Tai Yan was off duty, my informant reported that he had gone to the private manor in Alley of the Miao Pavilion. I immediately invited Tanjin, the daughter of the Assistant Minister of War, to tea at a tea house. Tanjin and Tai Yan had been betrothed since childhood. Tai Yan was handsome, dashing, the kind of man she had always admired. The two were originally supposed to marry, but her grandmother had died unexpectedly last year. She was in mourning for 3 years, so the wedding had to wait. The tea house overlooked the exact manor in the alley. As we sipped tea upstairs, I pretended to glance out the window and gasped. Tanjin followed my gaze. A martial-trained daughter of a military household, she had excellent eyesight and clearly saw. Zhong Yuanni, soft and fragile like a willow, nestled against Tai Yan's chest, looking pitiable as they whispered and smiled at each other. Tanjin's eyes instantly turned red. That shameless mutt. With a furious roar, she grabbed her sword and stormed downstairs, charging straight into the manor like a whirlwind, kicking the main gates open. If Tai Yan hadn't blocked her, she would have sent Zhong Yuanni to the heavens with a single slash. Tai Yan immediately shielded Zhong Yuanni and shouted, "Jin Zhen. There's nothing improper between me and Miss Zhong. We're strangers who met by chance. She was alone and helpless, so I helped her. Please don't hurt an innocent." Tanjin bared her teeth. "Innocent. Innocent, my arse. You expect me to believe two strangers can roll around in each other's arms in broad daylight, nearly undressing right there, and claim it's all clean and pure? What, do you think I'm blind?" Zhong Yuanni clutched her bleeding scalp, tears streaming. Her voice trembled. "I'm just a poor girl with no family. Why must you bully me? I've never had any improper thoughts. Ta Gongzi saved me, I never meant to come between you." Tanjin, born of a general's bloodline, had spent her youth on the battlefield. Though she had returned to the capital and learned to act like a noble lady, the fire in her bones never faded. Her voice dropped cold. "Bully you. Good. Let me show you what real bullying looks like." With a few sword strokes, she slashed off half of Zhong Yuanni's hair, cutting deep into her scalp. Blood splattered across the floor. "You say you and Oppos, re-pure." She spat. "Then become a nun. That's the only way I'll believe you." Zhong Yuanni shrieked, clutching her bleeding head. "Lang Jun. Save me." Ta Yan panicked. "Tanjin. That's enough." But Tanjin only smirked. With a swift strike, she sliced off Ta Yan's hat, his hair falling loose. "Ta Yan," she said coldly. "From this moment on, I, Tanjin, break off our engagement. Just like this broken strand of hair. Our ties are cut." With that, she turned and left without looking back. On the way back, I took the initiative to admit. Elder Sister Tan, I invited you to tea today so you could witness firsthand the disgraceful affair between my brother and Miss Zhong. I used you. I'm sorry. Tanjin's expression remained calm. You did use me. But you also helped me. Let's call it even. Then she added coolly. But you clearly could have just told me the truth. Instead, you played tricks. That, I can't accept. From now on, there's no need for us to associate further. I watched her back as she walked away, a faint ache stirring in my chest, but no regret. What I wanted was for her to lose control, to clash with Taiyan, to make the entire capital laugh at their disgrace. If I'd told her everything from the beginning, would she have acted so decisively? So, even if I had to do it again, I'd choose the same. As expected, news of the broken engagement shook the capital. The Ta and Tan families turned from allies to enemies overnight. Rumors spread like wildfire. Taiyan had a mistress before marriage. The entire city buzzed with gossip. While public opinion raged, the Assistant Minister of War, Tan Zhen's father, submitted a memorial to the court, accusing the Marquis estate of poor discipline. He claimed Taiyan had taken in the daughter of a criminal as a mistress, a crime punishable by death. My father knelt and pleaded his innocence, saying Taiyan only helped her out of compassion, not because of any romantic affair. But Taiyan knelt boldly and proclaimed, Your Majesty, I love Miss Zhong with all my heart. I beg Your Majesty to grant us marriage. My father trembled with fury, pointing at Taiyan's nose. You unfilial son, you. Before he could finish, he collapsed in rage. The court descended into chaos. The emperor, furious, ordered Taiyan dragged away and beaten with 50 heavy strikes. His screams echoed to the heavens. By the end, he was barely breathing, covered in blood, carried back to the estate like a corpse. Yet His Majesty's anger hadn't subsided. He immediately stripped both my father and Taiyan of their titles. Wen Yu was the one who told me all of this. After such a mess, getting Zhong Yuanni into the Marquis estate again would be harder than reaching the heavens. She remained confined in Taiyan's private villa, closely watched by those I had stationed nearby, no chance to stir up trouble. Meanwhile, Wen Yu had located the treasure trove, hidden in a mountain crevice just a day's ride from the capital. I, conveniently, was free from any family interference. That night, Wen Yu and I set off to open the vault. Just like the legend said, it was filled with glittering gold, rare gems, miraculous pills, and ancient medical texts. At the deepest part of the trove hung a painting of a beautiful woman, her eyes bright, brows elegant, smile like spring itself. Beneath the portrait sat a carved writing desk, holding a single book and a sealed letter. On the envelope. For Ta Xiaojie to open personally. It was meant for me. I opened the letter and finally learned the truth. Divine Dr. Mu and the woman in the painting were husband and wife, once a match made in heaven. But fate had not been kind. His wife died in childbirth, taking their child with her. The world called him a miracle doctor, able to heal bones and regrow flesh. Yet even he couldn't save his beloved wife and unborn child. Consumed by grief, he devoted himself to a radical study, how to allow men to bear children. Unbelievably, he succeeded. He left all of his research and medical legacy to me. He wrote that I had a natural talent for medicine. He hoped I would inherit his life's work. Stepping out of the vault, I said to Wen Yu, I want to meet the Grand Princess. Can I sneak into the palace disguised as your attendant? Wen Yu chuckled. No need to make it so complicated. The Grand Princess visits Baiyun Temple to offer incense every month. So I went to Baiyun Temple and met her. The Grand Princess was the daughter of the former Empress. As both the legitimate daughter and the eldest, she should have been heir by right. But in the end, His Majesty merely named her imperial successor, a title he used only to honor the late emperor's promise to pass the throne to her. Yet promises were just words. The empire now belonged to the current emperor, not the late one. Imperial successor, neither fully crowned princess nor fully dismissed. The emperor had already abolished the female official system, yet placed her in this vague, ambiguous position. Did he truly intend for her to inherit the throne? Everyone thought not. That's why countless others believed they still had a chance. The court, both inside and out, grew more chaotic by the day. But, did His Majesty really think that way? I spoke carefully. I believe His Majesty still wishes for Your Highness to inherit the throne. But succession has always been the foundation of dynasties. The late emperor passed the crown to His Majesty only because his body was poisoned and unable to bear heirs. That pain still weighs on His Majesty's heart, it's understandable. Your Highness is a woman, and frailier than the late emperor once was. Childbirth is a gamble with death. The incense smoke curled gently through the room. The Grand Princess sat upright, calmly sipping tea. Her face held the pallor of one born with poor health, yet her bearing remained regal and composed. She looked at me, her gaze icy, heavy with pressure. How bold, daring to guess the Emperor's will. I dropped to my knees. Your Highness, I am the direct disciple of divine Dr. Mu. I possess sacred medicine to nourish Your Highness's health. My master also discovered a miracle pill that allows a man to conceive. If Your Highness were to take a consort husband and let him bear the heir, then all concerns of succession would be resolved. Her expression flickered. My words had clearly struck a chord. She stared at me in silence for a long moment, then suddenly smiled. So, you're Wenyu's little childhood sweetheart. Truly, your courage reaches the heavens. But I like that kind of spirit. Rise. I let out a long breath and slowly got up from the floor. As I lifted my head, I saw someone step out from behind the folding screen, cloaked in a brilliant golden imperial robe. Thud. I dropped back to my knees, spine turning cold. Your humble servant greets Your Majesty. The Emperor looked at me, half smiling. Now you're afraid, little girl. The Grand Princess chuckled teasingly. Father, don't scare her. If Wenyu finds out later, he'll probably drop dead from heartbreak. I kept my head lowered, silently listening to their banter. Yet deep in my heart, I felt immense relief, Wenyu's intel had been true. The supposed rift between the Emperor and the Grand Princess was all just a rumor. As I stepped out of Baiyun Temple, I saw Wenyu perched on a tree branch, bored out of his mind waiting for me. The moment he spotted me, he leapt down gracefully, walking over with a light smile. How did it go? I'd meant to act aloof and mysterious, but the corners of my lips betrayed me, curling up uncontrollably. The Grand Princess appointed me as a court lady to serve at her side. Eyes sparkling, I grinned. Ah, you deserve a big reward for this. What do you want? Just name it. The Grand Princess had frail health and needed daily martial training, Wenyu was her personal instructor. Everything about her and the Emperor, he knew like the back of his hand. It was he who told me, the Emperor loved his daughter deeply, like any father devoted to his child. Wenyu stroked his chin and raised an eyebrow. Anything. I nodded eagerly. As long as it's not murder, arson, or treason, go ahead. His eyes gleamed. Then, call me Yugij once. Without hesitation, I opened my mouth. Yugij. Wenyu looked like he'd been struck by lightning, stunned into silence before stomping his foot. No. Too fast. I wasn't ready yet. Say it again, but let me prepare. I tilted my head, smiled mischievously, then yelled. Yugij. 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 Giggling, I ran down the mountain trail, still calling out teasingly. You is such a dummy. A silly gidge. When you used Lightfoot martial arts to catch up, within seconds he appeared beside me. Suddenly, he grabbed me into his arms and kissed me, softly, gently, like a dayanfly brushing the surface of water. I saw his face flush red like a monkey's behind and burst into laughter. You're even shyer than me. Are you really the mighty general Wen Yu who strikes fear into enemy hearts? Wen Yu gritted his teeth in frustration, glaring at me. Ta Mingzhou. Stop laughing or I'll kiss you until you cry. I rose on tiptoe and kissed him again, then smiled like a blooming flower. Then go ahead. Kiss me to death. His eyes darkened. He lifted my face, lowered his head, and kissed me again, deeply, with all the emotions of this life and the last. A breeze fluttered past. Petals drifted through the air, falling softly onto our hair, our shoulders. Back at the Marquis' estate, still shrouded in gloom, a royal decree arrived. I was officially appointed as Deputy Supervisor of the Crown Prince's Celestial Bureau, a fourth-rank official post. Just like that, I had surpassed both my father and my brother in status. When they saw me now, both of them looked awkward and at a loss, unable to stand tall, unsure whether to greet or kneel. Only my mother still offered warm greetings. She had always been the perfect noble matron, her heart leaning toward whoever brought the most benefit to the household. That day, I had just returned from morning court. Before I could even step off the carriage, Zhong Yuanni came charging out like a madwoman, screaming. Ta Mingzhou, you wretched snake. You schemed against your own brother, ruined his reputation and dignity. You're a venomous woman. May the heavens strike you down. She had just finished holding her parents' funeral, and was hit immediately with another crushing blow. Hiding in your carriage. If you've got the guts, come down and face me. I lifted the curtain and stepped out, dressed in crimson court robes. Zhong Yuanni's face went deathly pale. She had been kept locked in Tai Yan's private estate, completely unaware of what had happened outside, unaware that I had been promoted. My voice turned cold. This woman publicly insulted a court official in broad daylight. Arrest her and take her to the magistrate. Guards immediately stepped in and seized her like a raving lunatic. Still she shrieked like a madwoman. No, this isn't right. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Ta Mingzhou can't become a fourth-rank official. This isn't in the script. System. System, where are you? Then she spun toward me and screamed. You can't treat me like this. I'm carrying your brother's child. Your brother was crippled by 50 strokes from the emperor. He'll never father children again. The one in my belly, it's his only heir. I stepped forward and slapped her hard across the face. Blood dripped from her lips. I sneered. You think anyone wants that cursed thing in your womb? I turned to face Tai Yan, who had just arrived after hearing the commotion. Brother, do you want it? Zhong Yuanni immediately turned to him, eyes full of desperate hope. But Tai Yan averted his gaze. His voice was cold. The mother is already tainted. That child may as well not exist. I smiled at her. Did you hear that clearly? Zhong Yuanni burst into tears, despair twisting her features, before being dragged away, screaming like a lunatic. She died in prison, broken, hysterical. Before her death, she scrawled on the wall with her own blood. The script is wrong. I'm the female lead. It's me. I have to start over. When I heard the news, I merely curled my lips into a faint smile. I still remembered the final words I had heard in my past life, Zhong Yuanni whispering to the system. The original heroine is dead. I've stolen all her fortune and fate. But I was that original heroine. I was the one chosen by fate to be the real female lead of this world. And Zhong Yuanni. Just a shameless thief. Now that thief was dead. From this moment forward, this story will be written by my own hand. The end.